They called her Sergeant Apron by day 3, right before she calmly wrapped a scalded wrist with a dish rag and zero panic. Name's Edith May. 68 lunch lady, or so they thought. The smell of boiled grits still clung to her floral apron that morning. Ever misjudged someone based on how they looked? Let's talk about that. At exactly 6:03 a.m., the front door of Green Hollow Community Center creaked open. In shuffled a small woman with silver-threaded hair tucked beneath a soft green kerchief, a floral apron folded over one arm and a canvas tote slung over the other. Her orthopedic shoes made a faint rubbery sigh with each step. No one noticed her. The center smelled of pine cleaner and warm paper, and the early light filtered through dusty blinds like gauze. Edith May took her usual route past the silent multipurpose room, through the narrow hallway, with portraits of past council presidents, and into the kitchen. She flipped on the lights, sighed at the empty coffee urn, and set her thermos next to the sink. Her movements were smooth, practiced. She didn't hum or whistle. She simply began. By 7:00 a.m., the kitchen was alive with smells, biscuits rising in the oven gravy, bubbling gently on the stovetop coffee, finally gurgling into the carafe. She arranged the cafeteria line with quiet precision, setting out trays, cups, napkins, all without fanfare. At 7:15, the teenagers arrived, dozens of them, shuffling in with matching green shirts that read Summer Civic Leadership. Blue ash. Most looked half awake. Some whispered about phone service. Others groaned about being volunteered by their parents. And then came the first chuckle. "Looks like someone's grandma wandered into the wrong camp," Jake whispered to Marla, nudging her with his elbow. Marla snorted. "You think she's running the kitchen or just here to collect everyone's bingo cards?" she smirked. Behind the counter, Edith pretended not to hear. She adjusted her apron, tied it at her waist, and ladled scrambled eggs into a steam tray. Angela, quieter than the rest, trailed behind and took a tray near the end of the line. She noticed the name embroidered in faded thread on the apron. E. May. "Good morning," Edith said gently, barely louder than the clink of the ladle. Angela blinked. "Good morning, ma'am." In the dining hall, Sergeant Kelly stood at attention near the front clipboard in hand. His graying buzz cut and crisp khakis made him look like he still belonged on a drill field. "Welcome to Day 1 of the 2023 Summer Civic Leadership Camp," he announced. "Some folks around town like to call us the Platoon. You'll learn why soon enough." Jake leaned over to Marla. "Bet that apron outranks us." Laughter bubbled between bites of biscuit and gravy. Angela said nothing, but her eyes shifted toward the kitchen window where Edith was cleaning quietly. Later that morning, during a fire safety drill, chaos erupted. Someone knocked over a full kettle. A sharp cry echoed through the kitchen. Angela dropped her notepad and turned toward the sound. A boy was clutching his wrist, red and slick with a quick burn. Before anyone else could move, Edith was already beside him. "Sit," she said calmly, motioning to the bench near the fridge. She tore a clean dish towel in one motion, soaked part of it in cool water, then wrapped the boy's wrist in a precise spiral from palm to elbow, tucking the end beneath the edge with a flick. Her hands were steady, her breath even. The room stilled. No one spoke. Sergeant Kelly finally stepped forward. "Ma'am, where'd you learn that?" Edith glanced up. Her eyes were soft but unreadable. "Long time ago," she said. "Somewhere hot." Angela stared at her. There was something in the way Edith had crouched, the way her fingers had moved, not just familiar, but trained. She wanted to ask, but the words wouldn't come. That afternoon, while the others scrubbed picnic tables and practiced CPR with red dummies on yoga mats, Angela lingered in the kitchen. She watched Edith wipe down the counters with careful, circular strokes. Just before leaving, Angela paused at the doorway, looked back one more time. That wasn't from a cooking class, she whispered to herself. Outside, the sun was starting to slide behind the courthouse tower. The cafe across the street dimmed its sign to closed, but a paper note in the tip jar caught Angela's eye as she passed. Thank you for warmth. E.M. By Thursday, the jokes had evolved. No longer whispered in corners or exchanged with stifled giggles, they now echoed through the mess hall, openly bouncing off the metal legs of folding chairs and the buzzing fluorescent lights overhead. Sergeant Apron, reporting for duty. Jake bellowed, puffing his chest and waddling stiffly toward the cafeteria line with an exaggerated limp. A dish towel had been tied around his waist like an apron. Marla added her own flair. Incoming. We got a code red gravy spill on table 3, she mimicked, holding a walkie-talkie, pretending to duck behind a milk crate. Laughter rippled through the group. A few kids snorted milk through their noses. Edith, standing calmly behind the sneeze guard, gave no visible reaction. She laid a neat row of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches onto the tray, gloved hands moving with quiet rhythm. Her floral apron, faded and familiar by now, fluttered slightly from the ceiling fan's gentle breeze. She did not scold. She never had. Angela sat near the end of the table, eyes on her lemon water jaw tight. She wasn't laughing, not even smiling. The room seemed to hum louder than usual. Fluorescent bulbs buzzed, plastic trays clattered. Somewhere outside, a lawnmower growled against dry grass. Edith continued serving. A boy with a crooked collar shuffled past, and with the softest motion she reached out and straightened the edge of his shirt. He didn't even notice. No one did. Except Angela. It wasn't much, but it felt like something. Later that afternoon, when most of the teens were at the ropes course or napping in the recreation room, Angela wandered into the mess hall, alone, drawn by the quiet. She poured herself another glass of lemon water, just like Edith always did, and sat by the corkboard wall. Pinned between a flyer for Friday's pancake breakfast and a local bingo announcement, she noticed a laminated collage of faded black and white photographs, veterans from Blue Ash through the decades, most in uniform, some smiling. A few unsmiling medals glinting on their chests. On the countertop nearby beneath the napkin dispenser, something caught her eye. A small cloth patch, olive green with faint gold thread. She leaned closer. A worn insignia, a red cross stitched over a caduceus staff. Army Medical Corps. She picked it up gently, turning it in her hand. That's when she noticed the mark. As Edith reached across the counter to adjust the salt container, the sleeve of her blouse shifted just enough to reveal the underside of her left wrist. There, tucked close to the edge of her skin, was a faint tattoo numbers, in a sequence too tidy to be random. Angela's breath caught. The numbers were inked in neat block text, 14631 VN 47. That night, after lights out in the dorm room, Angela pulled out her tablet under the covers. Her fingers moved quickly across the screen. Vietnam Field Medic ID formats, she whispered. She scrolled, read, stared. That number was consistent with service tags issued to field medics in Southeast Asia between 1968 and 1972. It wasn't decorative. It wasn't recent. She lay there, the soft hum of the window unit muffling the world, and stared into the darkness. Edith wasn't just kind. She was something else, something more. Across the street, in the second-story window of the Blue Ash Public Library, Lucinda Powell sat in her worn rocker behind the lace curtains. She watched the community center quietly, fingers wrapped around a teacup gone lukewarm. In her lap rested a photograph folded at the corners, black and white, brittle. She still wears the same shoes, Lucinda murmured to the empty room. And the same heart. The streetlights outside flickered on with a warm buzz. Down the block, the cafe flipped its sign to Veterans Eat Free, Fridays only. Edith never used it. In the mess hall, a slice of lemon chess pie sat untouched on Jake's tray next to a crumpled napkin. He rose to toss it in the bin, paused, then sat back down and finished it slowly, fork tapping gently against the plate. The kitchen smelled of cinnamon and old paper. It was the kind of scent that drifted in quietly and lingered in corners, tucked between the clatter of metal bowls and the soft thud of peaches being halved on a cutting board. Angela stood by the sink, sleeves rolled up, her hands sticky with juice and flour dust. Thunderheads loomed outside the wide window, casting the room in a gentle dimness. The power had flickered twice already, but Edith just hummed along with the battery-powered radio playing a low tune from the 1950s. "You ever made peach cobbler before?" Edith asked, not looking up. Angela shook her head, then remembered Edith couldn't see that from across the counter. "No, ma'am, but I'm a fast learner." Edith chuckled softly and handed over a paring knife. "Good. We'll need 12 for the pan and 4 for tasting." While Edith moved to organize baking pans, Angela reached for a folded dish towel on the edge of the shelf and saw something poking out from behind an old recipe box. A yellowed envelope corner frayed. Out of instinct more than mischief, she slid it out gently and unfolded the brittle paper. It wasn't a recipe. It was a typed commendation on government stationery, faded but legible, in recognition of bravery and exemplary field medical service during Operation Iron Torch, 1971. Signed at the bottom in blue ink, A. Austin Commanding Officer. Angela's eyes widened. The name leapt out at her like a thunderclap. "General Arthur Austin," she murmured. She slipped the paper back into the envelope, but not before snapping a quick photo with her phone just in case. Later during break, Angela sat in the quiet corner of the supply closet turned storage lounge. Using the camp's patchy Wi-Fi, she typed in the name. Arthur J. Austin. Decorated U.S. Army General, Da Nang, 1970-72. Awarded Silver Star, now retired. Frequently speaks at veterans events. The screen glowed faintly in the dark, matching the stormy clouds pressing against the windows. Angela leaned back, heart thudding. Edith wasn't just kind, or capable, or quietly brave. She had served. The door creaked behind her. She froze. "Did you find the extra flour?" Edith asked softly. Angela turned, half shielding the phone. "No. I was just..." Edith stepped closer, her hands still dusted with cinnamon and sugar. Her eyes, tired but kind, rested on the envelope Angela had placed beside her on the crate. There was no anger, no alarm, only a slow, measured silence. "That year still walks with me," Edith said quietly. "Every day, even now." Angela swallowed. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have." Edith smiled faintly. "You didn't ask. That's more than most." Across the street, Lucinda Powell stood at the threshold of the community center for the first time in nearly a year. The last time she'd been inside it was for her husband's memorial. Today, she didn't speak, just sat on the bench near the kitchen door, hands folded neatly on her lap, eyes trailing the steam curling from the window. She could hear the clink of mixing bowls, the low murmur of Edith's voice, and she sat very still. Back in the kitchen, as the cobbler baked and the storm rolled in, Angela scribbled a note in her journal. She slipped the printed photo of the commendation inside a folded page and sealed it with a paperclip. She didn't know why, Part of her wanted to protect Edith's privacy. Another part, a growing one, wanted to understand. Near dinner time, Mrs. Janice gathered everyone in the main hall. "We have a special guest confirmed for next week's closing ceremony," she announced, her voice bright. "General Arthur Austin. Yes, the General Austin has accepted our invitation." There was polite applause. Angela dropped her pencil. Across the hall, Lucinda stiffened. Her eyes darted toward the kitchen. Her hands tightened around the bench edge. In the twilight that followed after the dishes were dried and the teens gone back to their dorms, Edith sat alone on her porch swing, rocking gently. Crickets chirped in the damp grass. A single firefly blinked near the hydrangeas. She whispered into the dark, more to the breeze than herself. "He's still alive, after all this time." The folding chairs creaked beneath the weight of anticipation. Children fidgeted in their seats, sipping lemonade from plastic cups, as the adults murmured over paper programs. Red, white, and blue bunting hung in uneven loops across the multi-purpose room, fastened with Scotch tape and optimism. A faint breeze rustled the open windows, carrying the scent of grilled corn, citronella, and the familiar mustiness of old linoleum. It was Friday evening, June 24th, the end of the summer civic leadership camp. Parents, town officials, and neighbors gathered to hear speeches, watch certificates get handed out, and take blurry photos of sunburned teens. Angela sat between her parents, both of whom had taken off work early to attend. Her father wore a tie that matched the bunting. Her mother had tears in her eyes already, and nothing had happened yet. Near the side wall, Edith stood quietly with a tray of cookies and lemonade. She wore her usual apron pressed that morning, and orthopedic shoes polished with olive oil and elbow grease. Her hair was pinned up neatly, and a single pearl earring gleamed from each lobe. The bluegrass quartet outside plucked out the last notes of their warm-up. Sergeant Kelly stepped to the microphone. "Thank you, friends and families of Blue Ash. It's been a proud 3 weeks of community growth training and cooperation. Now I have the distinct honor of welcoming our special guest." The room hushed. "Please join me in giving a warm welcome to retired U.S. Army General Arthur J. Austin." Polite applause rose as an older man in a tailored blue blazer approached the podium. He moved with the grace of someone long accustomed to standing straight, his silver hair clipped short, his medals modestly pinned. He nodded once, then stepped past the microphone. He didn't glance at his note cards. He didn't scan the room for handshakes. He didn't even pause at the podium. He walked straight toward the woman in the apron. Conversations stopped. A child's juice box hissed in the silence. Edith, blinking once, stood a little straighter. When he reached her, the general stopped, placed his hand to his brow, and saluted. A crisp, formal military salute. The room collectively inhaled. "This woman," he said, his voice low and even, "saved 19 lives under mortar fire in Da Nang, including mine." Angela felt her breath hitch. Her mother placed a hand over her heart. Jake dropped his program. Marla gripped the seat in front of her. Edith opened her mouth as if to speak, but nothing came out. Her eyes glistened. She did not wear rank. General Austin continued, turning slowly to face the audience. She wore bandages, carried stretchers, learned to speak calmly when bombs fell, and when the last helicopter lifted off, she stayed behind one more day to get one more boy to safety. He paused. The silence wasn't empty. It was full, thick with stunned recognition. "Service," he said, "does not always wear rank. Sometimes it wears an apron and washes your dishes." The crowd erupted not in raucous cheers, but in reverent applause. A few people stood unsure if they should. Then others joined. Lucinda, seated near the wall, pressed both hands over her cane and whispered, She never told me. Jake looked down at his shoes, then up at Edith. His cheeks burned with something close to shame. Angela's eyes shimmered with tears. Mrs. Janice dabbed her eyes and leaned into Sergeant Kelly's shoulder. The general waited for the room to settle before he turned back to Edith. Ms. May, he said quietly, but clearly. Would you consider returning next summer not as support staff, but as our lead instructor? The question floated there, suspended in quiet awe. Edith didn't answer. Not yet. Her eyes were fixed on the floor, her fingers gently holding the edge of her apron. Outside, the bluegrass band began to play America the Beautiful. The first few notes trembling into the dusk. The porch swing creaked once in the breeze. Somewhere a flag lifted gently against its pole. On Saturday morning, just past 7, Edith May opened her front door and froze. There, on the porch swing's side table, lay a small, unevenly cut slice of peach pie wrapped in wax paper. Beside it, a folded letter tucked under a flat river stone. And on top, balanced precariously, was a homemade card crafted from blue construction paper. In thick black marker, the front read, "Thank you, Captain E. Love the platoon." She stood for a moment the summer morning, wrapping around her like a warm quilt. Sparrows chirped from the elms, and down the street, a group of children pedaled bikes with tiny flags fluttering behind them. One called out to another, "Race you to the corner," and laughter spilled into the air like water. Edith brought everything inside. She set the pie on a plate and opened the letter with careful hands. The handwriting was slanted, but neat, dated August 1975. Dear Edith, you gave me life. I used it. I came home, married Rachel, and we had 2 daughters. I coach softball. I fix radios. Sometimes I still wake up hearing sandbags thud, but I remember your voice saying, "You're not done yet, kid." You never asked for thanks, but I send this in case it ever finds you. I hope you're still out there planting things, feeding people, because I'm still here because of you. Calvin Mendez, 1st Battalion, 5th Marines. She stared at it for a long time. The letter had never been mailed postmarked, but returned years ago. The envelope bore the creases of decades, corners worn like old cloth. She folded it again just as carefully and slid it between the pages of her grandmother's recipe book right next to her buttermilk biscuit recipe. The knock came just after 9:00. Angela stood on the porch holding her phone in one hand and a paper napkin in the other. "Good morning," she said, hesitating. I thought you might like a picture." She handed over the phone. On the screen was a clear snapshot from the night before General Austin, standing at full salute, his hand crisped to brow, facing Edith in her floral apron and pressed slacks. Edith said nothing, just stared at it. Her fingers gently returned the phone. "I printed one too," Angela added quickly. "I'll bring it Monday." "Thank you," Edith said. "Would you like some pie?" They sat on the porch swing, legs slightly apart to keep from bumping knees. The wood creaked with a familiar rhythm. "Googled Calvin Mendez," Angela murmured. Edith raised an eyebrow. "He's still alive. He teaches electrical repair at a community college in Iowa." Edith smiled, not with surprise, but with a quiet, tucked-in peace. A little before noon, 2 more figures approached. Jake had his hands stuffed into his shorts pockets. Marla wore a shirt that said, "Don't mess with biscuits." We brought lemonade," Jake said awkwardly. Marla cleared her throat. "And, well, you made biscuits better than my mom's." Edith nodded. "I'll take that as a high compliment." Jake looked at the floorboards. We were wrong. About a lot of stuff. Edith tilted her head. You were young. That's where mistakes live. They sat. Not long. Just long enough. When they left, Jake set his empty cup down, and when no one was looking, slipped a $5 bill beneath it. In the afternoon sun, Lucinda appeared at the end of the walk. She held a cloth-bound book in both hands, as though offering a fragile truth. I didn't know, Lucinda said. You didn't ask, Edith, replied her voice warm, not cold. Lucinda sat beside her, fingers brushing Edith's. Would you help me read again? For the kids, story time starts back Monday. Edith looked down at the book cover, children's poems of war and peace. She nodded slowly. Yes. I think we're not done giving. They sat like that, hands folded together, past the hour when shadows lengthened and cardinals dipped in the birdbath. Later, as Edith cleared the table, she turned over the thank you card once more. On the back, written in smaller letters beneath a doodle of a son wearing sunglasses, was one final line. Next summer won't be the same without you. Captain E. She smiled, and for the first time in 5 years left the porch light on. The scent of hot dogs and cherry pie hung thick in the air, mingling with freshly mowed grass and the faint tang of sunscreen. July 4th had arrived in Blue Ash, Virginia, and the town square park pulsed with celebration. Folding tables draped in star-spangled cloths, children chasing one another with red plastic flags, and a brass band warming up near the gazebo, the trumpets' blare wobbling through the star-spangled banner. It was the town's first Independence Day picnic since the pandemic years, and everything felt slightly newer, slightly softer. People greeted one another with less hurry, more eye contact. Near the library's front lawn, a wooden bench had been placed under the old oak tree. On its side, a bronze plaque shimmered faintly in the morning sun in honor of E. May, Quiet Valor. Angela stood near the gazebo, her hair pulled into a neat bun, khakis pressed a camp lanyard around her neck. In her hands was a folded paper, the same notes Edith had used during her years at the civic training camp. They were creased, dog-eared, and patched with layers of tape. All right, recruits, Angela called out to a circle of middle schoolers. Flag folding is a tradition of respect. Today we'll do it Edith's way, slow, careful, and with both hands. She unfolded a flag on a felt-lined table and began demonstrating step by deliberate step. Off to the side, Jake was flipping cornmeal batter in a cast-iron pan perched on a portable grill. It's not just cornbread, he told a curious 10-year-old. It's campfire cornbread, the Edith way. Which means you don't flip until you see steam from the edges and you never rush the crust. Marla, now with a clipboard and an army of sticker name tags, moved like a sergeant in her element. Got allergies? She asked each newcomer. Mark it here. Lemonade station is to the left. Be respectful. This is a day to show up, not show off. Laughter rolled across the green. Around noon, Sergeant Kelly stepped onto the small wooden stage and tapped the mic. We have a short reading today, he began, sent from someone who couldn't be here, but whose words carry weight. Angela stepped up and read, her voice steady. Some heroes don't march. They stand. And when they do, we all learn how to follow. Edith May showed us that strength does not always shout. Sometimes it hums while washing dishes. It folds blankets in silence. It knows every name before you've said hello. This community learned more from her steadiness than 1,000 speeches. Let us remember her not as a symbol, but as a neighbor, a porch light that stayed on even when no one knocked. Arthur J. Austin, Major General, retired. There was no applause, just silence. Then someone sniffed, then a few claps, than many. Lucinda, seated under the oak tree, cracked open a worn book of children's poems. Around her, a half-circle of little ones sat cross-legged in the shade, lemonade cups tucked between knees. Was Miss Edith really in the war? One girl asked. Lucinda smiled. No, sweetheart. She was at the war, but she didn't fight with a sword. With what then? A boy asked. Lucinda looked to the sky, then back down. She fought with stitching thread and a steady heart. The boy nodded slowly. Like a superhero. Exactly like that, she said. At precisely 1:10 p.m., the porch swing creaked, but not in Blue Ash's neighborhoods. This time it was Edith arriving late to her own honoring, carrying no tray, no thermos, no apron over her shoulder. Except, she did wear the apron. Tied neatly, pressed crisp. But today it wasn't for serving. It was for being seen. As she stepped onto the grass, people began to clap, not wildly, but warmly, as if they'd all agreed silently that this was how you welcomed someone who had waited too long. She made her way to the bench, the one with her name on it. She didn't sit right away. She touched the plaque first, ran a finger over the words. Then slowly, she took her seat. Angela walked over, balancing a slice of cherry pie in a paper bowl. She handed it to Edith, then eased down beside her. They watched the band begin another tune this time. This land is your land. Children danced in half-rhythm. Flags flapped against folding chairs. Angela leaned close. You think they'll remember this? Edith took a bite of pie, chewed slowly, then smiled. Not if we stop showing them. And with that, the breeze picked up, rustling the handmade flag, stitched by the kids, that now hung behind the gazebo. In its bottom right corner, in tiny cross-stitched letters, was a single name, E. May. Sometimes the quietest seat in the room belongs to the bravest soul. Edith May never asked to be seen, yet her quiet acts of kindness lit up a whole town. In a world quick to judge by uniforms and titles, she reminded us that dignity often wears an apron and speaks in gentle deeds. Like a lantern in a window on a long road home, compassion has a way of guiding others even long after the light has gone out. So if this story touched something in you, pass it on with a small gesture, a kind word, or maybe just a seat saved for someone who's not yet been heard.